This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Raisina Dialogue 2020. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, when you see the 5th edition of Raisina Dialogue, which inaugurated in the evening today, we also see that this has been a huge success in the consecutive years that we have followed this dialogue. How do you see the participation of the 7 former head of states in the evening today, along with our Prime Minister? How much of an impact does this have on the world's foreign policy?
I think the global profile of Raisina Dialogue has been increasing. It was started 5 years ago, just after Prime Minister Modi's government came, and at that time I remember the External Affairs Minister was Mrs. Sushma Swaraj. I think the beginning years, she was the one who would also give an address. And in the first year, there was former President Hamid Karzai, Chandrika Kumaratunga, etc. Several of them were there. But of late, over the last 2-3 years, we've been having the serving heads of government or heads of state. For instance, last year we had the Prime Minister of Norway who delivered the inaugural address. Before that, it was the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who had come and he had given the inaugural address. Prime Minister Modi is always present on those occasions, but he never speaks on those occasions. And this year also, it was the Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. Scott Morrison, who was invited to deliver the inaugural address. But then all of us are aware of the issues that are confronting them in terms of the bushfires and the huge damage and destruction, both as far as lives and as far as trees, flora, fauna is concerned. So in the last minute, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said that it will not be possible for him. He deeply regretted that he will not be able to make it. So the 7 former heads of state and government, those who are present here, those who are going to be participating in other meetings, they are the ones who will deliver the inaugural address at 6 o'clock. And there are very important people in that grouping. For instance, we have the former President Hamid Karzai. He's been, I think, coming for all the 5 years that we've had the Raisina Dialogue. There'll be the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Helen Clark, Stephen Harper, the former Prime Minister of Canada, Carl Bildt, the former Prime Minister of Sweden, Anders Rasmussen, the former Prime Minister of Denmark, former Prime Minister of Bhutan, Tshering Tobge, and Mr. Han Seung-soo, the former Prime Minister of Republic of Korea. So all 7 of them will deliver their address. But in addition to that, of course, the dialogue takes place also tomorrow and day after. And we have a large number of about more than a dozen foreign ministers of different countries. And they will be speaking and they will be having a one-to-one dialogue with some of the people. And I think that will add a great deal to the substance of the discussions and to promote understanding and cooperation on different issues and challenges that confront the world today.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, as you pointed out, in the 3-day conference, we will see around 12 foreign ministers, and we have a foreign minister of Russia here, South Africa, Australia, among the nations. We also significantly have the Iranian foreign minister who will be in the capital attending the Raisina Dialogue. And this is Javed Zarif's first participation we see after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and after what we have seen a lot of unrest, a lot of instability in the Middle East. How significant do you think this is for the India-Iran relationship? And what signal does this send to the world community about the strength of the Indian-Iranian relationship, that despite this instability, despite the fact that we have the Soleimani assassination and we have kind of the entire region on the unrest, we still have the participation of the Iranian foreign minister here?
I think it speaks very highly of the strength as also of the dynamism and vitality of relationship between India and Iran. Because you can see that the direct confrontation between United States and Iran, for the time being, that has receded to the background. The escalation has not taken place. Both sides have expressed restraint. But that doesn't mean that the problems between Iran and the United States, they have been resolved. We can expect going forward that these problems will emerge and confrontation and conflict in the Middle East will continue to take place. Notwithstanding all these issues, all these problems, as you mentioned, Simran, Jawad Zarif has decided to come to India. I think it speaks very highly both of the relationship as also of India's standing in the world, that he has found that it will advance the foreign policy interests of Iran to participate in this. I think it also speaks highly of the profile of the Raisina Dialogue that it has been able to assume over the last 5 years, that he thought that coming here and meeting such a large number of foreign ministers, as you mentioned, the foreign minister of Russia is going to be here. It is quite likely that they also might have a bilateral dialogue amongst themselves. Foreign Minister of Australia will be here. Foreign ministers of a large number of countries from Europe, Hungary, Latvia, Estonia, Denmark, so many of them are going to be here. The Foreign Minister of Uzbekistan is also going to be here, who's a strong partner and colleague and a neighbor of Iran. So I think it gives an opportunity to the Iranian leadership also to connect with these leaders to the extent possible on a one-to-one basis. Mr. Jawad Zarif is going to be here for 2 nights. He's arriving tonight. He'll be here the whole of day tomorrow. Tomorrow there is a one-to-one interaction between him and the president of the Observer Research Foundation, and he will have all the other time available to interact with the other leaders, and also it will be an opportunity for him to send out his message to the global community. So I think this speaks very highly of the stage at which Raisina Dialogue has come now, as also, as I mentioned, the strength of the bilateral partnership.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, if we were now to look at India's neighborhood first policy and then to specifically look at the India-Bangladesh relationship, how closely do you think does this signal the fact that India's relationship as far as its immediate neighborhood is concerned is on a strong footing, and despite the stress and the strain that every relationship goes through, India and Bangladesh continue to enjoy one of the best relationships it's had for many decades?
I think this period can be termed as the golden period as far as relations between India and Bangladesh is concerned, particularly after 1975. And I think that ever since Sheikh Hasina first came to power in 2009, progressively we have been seeing that the bilateral relationship between the two countries has been growing from strength to strength in every area. And I think this relationship received a particular fillip when Prime Minister Modi came to power, and then he was able to get the land boundary agreement, what is known as the Indira Mujib Accord, which was signed in 1975, but it could not be ratified by the Indian Parliament, notwithstanding the fact that many Indian governments, particularly Rajiv Gandhi's government in 1984, had such a huge majority in the Lok Sabha and also in the Rajya Sabha, but it was never ratified. Now here, after Prime Minister Modi came to power, the agreement was ratified by consensus by both houses of parliament. So I think this was a very strong message that went to Bangladesh, that this government and Prime Minister Modi himself is personally very strongly invested in taking this relationship forward. So after that, there have been a number of exchanges of visits at the highest level. We had the visit of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina also coming here in April last year. There is huge in terms of the economic engagement. There is very good cooperation, both in terms of the lines of credit that have been extended to Bangladesh, as also grants and loans that have been given to Bangladesh. And the presence of the information minister in the dialogue, I think, is another indication and testimony to the vibrancy and the vitality of this relationship.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, we also find that the National Security Advisor of Afghanistan and the United States Deputy National Security Advisor will also be attending the Raisina Dialogue. And as Ambassador Sajjanhar, you pointed out, this forum gives them an opportunity to interact, to talk one-on-one, and to talk with various other world leaders who have assembled in the capital. Do you feel that Afghanistan, US, when their NSAs get together and you are in the capital of India, which is again a major stakeholder in the future of Afghanistan, do you think then this provides a very significant and a very fertile environment and perfect location for them to discuss issues like Afghanistan?
Absolutely, because Afghanistan is a neighboring country as far as India is concerned, and Pakistan occupied Kashmir is a part of India, and with that part of Kashmir, Afghanistan has a direct land boundary linkage. So in that sense, it is a truly neighbor of India. And whatever happens in Afghanistan going forward, because President Trump has said that he would like to withdraw from there, he would like to reduce the engagement, he would like to take back American troops and forces from there. So if that happens, then the repercussions and the implications for the region as also for India, because if Taliban increases its dominance, its influence there, then that is going to have very many adverse repercussions for India. This is something also that is shared by the Afghan government itself, because what India has always been saying is that we would like an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, Afghan-controlled reconciliation process as it moves forward. So I think this will be a good opportunity to have a dialogue between the NSAs and between the Foreign Office of India with the NSA of Afghanistan and the Deputy NSA of the United States, to bring home to them what our concerns are, what our interests are, and see how they can be preserved and how they can be safeguarded as we try to find what is going to be the next scenario in terms of if the withdrawal of US troops takes place. Then what is the scenario going forward, particularly in view of the elections that have taken place recently, in which, although the final results are still not out, but President Ashraf Ghani seems to have got an outright majority.
Ambassador Sajjana, we also see that we will be having some 700 participants from more than 100 countries. There will be 30 heads of think tanks, and interestingly, 40% of the speakers at the Raisina Dialogue are going to be women. Do you feel that when we talk of women rights and gender equality, platforms and forums like this, and the fact that the dialogue is going to see 40% women speakers, do you also feel that this is India making its stand somewhere clear that this is the way we pursue this particular topic? Despite the fact that you have more than 700 participants, there are 7 former head of states, there are 12 foreign ministers, still 40% women who will be discussing the global foreign policy will be women. So how important and how strong a message is India sending on where it stands when it comes to gender equality?
I think it's a very strong message, and particularly if you also look at it, Simran, in the context of the SDGs or the Sustainability Development Goals. There is a focus on women participation, there is a focus on gender equality, there is a focus as far as girl education is concerned. So those are certain objectives, the goals that India is committed to achieve by 2030. Whatever architecture, whether political, whether financial, whether economic, whether security, cultural, education, healthcare, in all these areas we see that there is going to be very strong participation of women, and this will also send out a very strong message that India is not only paying lip service, but it is really means what it says.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, in the next 2 days we have a lot of sessions, a lot of foreign policy issues will be discussed, and this also signals to a great extent India's emergence on the global stage as one key player as far as world foreign policy is concerned. Which are the, say, 3 focus areas that you would think that these are the areas where India needs to focus more, so that India's strength on the global stage and India's voice on the global stage gets strengthened with time?
You mentioned about 3 areas where, and many of the areas which are of interest, which are of concern to India, are also the areas which the world is grappling with, the challenges that the world is confronting. And very quickly I will mention number 1 is terrorism, and that the issue of security, whether it is in the Indian Ocean, Indo-Pacific, whether it is in West Asia, Afghanistan, etc. So this will be an issue that will definitely come up, security, counter-terrorism. The other will be climate change, which again we have seen as a result of the problems of climate change, the inaugural speaker in our Raisina Dialogue has not been able to come. And I think the third is in terms of multilateralism, the multipolar order, whether it is trade or security architecture. So I think these 3 out of a host of others will be issues that will receive very close attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Raisina Dialogue 2020. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website newsonair.com. You can also follow us on the News on AIR app for updates. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.